Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is the weekly chart of the Euro Silver Cross as provided by netdania.com. You can click on the link below. And the reason why I put this out so far, it's really actually not accurate before roughly 2000, early 2000s, because the euro didn't exist. So these earlier prices are an amalgamation of various currencies that ended up making up the euro. But even if we look at the chart from the beginning of the euro going forward, you can see that the beta of price chart is just approaches 1 below or above 1 as to how much it correlates with another price. So a very high beta means that something correlates very closely. So you can see if we look back in this period of time between roughly 2003 and say 2011, there really is a very low beta, especially when you look at, I don't think I can add lines here, but I'll try. Yeah, I can. So if you look at this period here, for example, you've got silver rising significantly and the euro falling. So very low correlation, but when we pull it out to say the 8-hour, you can see now that our correlation is extremely high, and I accidentally pulled off the cross, so we'll put that back on. The correlation on the 8-hour is extremely high. You can see that they're beginning to trade nearly in lockstep. If we pull in closer to say the 30-minute, you still see something similar there. You can see a very, very high correlation in the price movement between the euro and silver. So why is that the case? Well, the common rationale is that that the weakness in the euro is strength in the dollar, and strength in the dollar is going to mean weakness in the metals. As I showed you, that correlation doesn't hold for many, many years, but they're using it as an excuse now to sell off the metals. I think that will, if the euro continues plunging below support, that eventually that will break. We're starting to see indications that it might, although silver had a very significant low at 27.25 today. It's back up to 27.85, nearly 28. Very, very volatile with the things that are going on in Europe. So I consider that a bogus type of correspondence between the two prices. That's more of a coincidence than anything else. And I expect that if the euro continues to fall, eventually silver will bounce back and go the opposite direction. They'll start to move the way they have historically, which is very often in opposite directions for extended periods of time. Let's get to the question real quick here of the question of the day, and that is from Ivan, and it's 1 billion ounces of silver. Brother John, I remember you did a video about gold when Venezuela was trying to get their gold back home, and how much gold that's ever been mined will fit into a place. And with that, it leads to my question: how much money is really 1 billion ounces in volume or space? In other words, how much silver can fit into my house versus gold? Thanks. Well, a little bit more gold is going to fit in your house than silver is going to fit in your house, and you can see that if we go over to the American Gold Eagle, and on the 1 ounce you can see the diameter on the 1 troy ounce coin is 32.7, and the thickness is 2.87. So you multiply those out, you get something in the 90s, low 90s. While the Silver Eagle, you've got 40.6 is the diameter and nearly 3 on the thickness, and you get about over 120 on that. So the Silver Eagle is significantly larger than the Gold Eagle, and that's just simply a function of the density of the metal. So obviously if you create a big block or cube of silver and a big huge cube of gold that's the same size, you're going to have a lot more gold there. Not a lot more, but a significant amount of more gold in that cube than you will have in silver. Now, if we want to look at the size of that cube, this is just a link from How Stuff Works, and they talk about how much is mined per year. 50 million ounces of gold is going to be a cube that is about 14 feet by 14 feet by 14 feet. Now, if you talk about all the gold that's ever been mined in the world, and their estimate is roughly 10 billion ounces. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree. Bixwer's going to say it's 10 times that. Other people are going to say it's less. But let's just go with 10 billion. That cube would be roughly 25 meters or 82 feet. So 82 feet by 82 feet by 82 feet. The other estimate that some have given would be if you took a tennis court and you made it as deep as it is wide, you get a cube, not a cube, but you get a rectangular shaped cube, and that would be roughly the 10 billion ounces. So you can see it would be quite possible if you had an acre of land that you could bury all the gold that's ever been mined in the history of the world on that land. Now, if we're talking about 1 billion ounces of silver, we're talking a tenth of that size, roughly, maybe an eighth of that size, because silver takes up more space. And then you're talking about something that you really could probably hide inside of a big house. So that's how small of a space it actually takes up. It's a shockingly small space, and that just gives you an idea of how extremely rare these precious metals are, and that's why they're called precious metals. So I wanted to get to the main topic of the night, and that's about civil servants. And the first thing I'm going to show you is an article that I read on Zero Hedge, and that's about Spain's public sector employees. And then we've got a video about protests in Spain. But I don't have time to read the whole thing, but I wanted to just point out a key thing about the public sector jobs in Spain. They say in this article, a job for life. Becoming a civil servant is the holy grail of career paths for many due to the permanent character of civil service employment in Spain. However, securing a government job is not an easy task. Considering that high unemployment has driven more people to apply, and since the government has cut back its public employment offers, competition today is fiercer than ever. To take part in the race for one of the few hundred clerical posts available each year in the judicial system, for example, means competing against tens of thousands. The odds of becoming a functionario in Spain are sometimes similar to gaining access to an Ivy League university. The typical candidate for a government job in Spain spends anywhere between 1 to 5 years preparing for the oposiciones and often must enroll in specialized courses at private academies, a 1 to 200 euro per month expense, not including study materials. Undoubtedly, public service candidates undertake a grueling and expensive race for a lifetime job. While most are left out, a small handful is able to capitalize on their efforts by securing a job in the private sector, mainly in the medical and legal service industries. An associate at one of Madrid's top law firms said, quote, "We often look to recruit young candidates who did not make the cut at the oposiciones. These are highly prepared individuals who, unlike newly grads, know the law by heart," literally. The select few who do make the cut at the oposiciones soon discover the meaning of that old adage, be careful what you wish for, as they become victims of their own success in a perverse system. The perversity of merit for complacency. Once the cherished civil service job is conquered, the incentives to work hard are gone. Focused dedication, arduous competition, and the reward of merit, the ingredients which got those functionarios their job in the first place, are replaced by a perverse system which drives them into a lifetime of imposed complacency. Public service chastises ambition and annihilates the individual, as there are no incentives for performance, special talents, or skills, nor are they pressured to work hard to keep the job. As the popular saying in Spain goes, a cabinet meeting must be summoned in order to fire a bureaucrat. And it goes on. So you can see that Spain is an example of a public sector gone mad. And the thing is that's so sad about it is that the solution is so very simple. It's the same solution in Spain as it would be in the United States. It's just so very simple. All you need to do to solve this problem is to continuously lower the wages of these jobs and the benefits available in these jobs until they go begging, until no one's willing to take those jobs. Then you know that you have found a fair market price for these jobs. When people would rather work in the private sector than work for the government, and there's a shortage of workers, then you know you've found the free market price. Now, of course, you can raise that a little bit, but the term itself, civil servants, of course, apparently now, and we'll see in a video, they're neither, because they're neither civil and they're not very good servants as well. So everything is turned upon its head now, and of course, as I've beaten the drum many times, this is the failure of socialism, that eventually you run out of other people's money, and of course the taxpayers are required to pay for these overpaid jobs, and the unemployment problem itself is indirectly and directly caused by these overpaid jobs, because the private sector is being taxed to pay these. Now, what you see in the video, this is Spain's indignados. They're mobilizing against austerity, and I want to watch a little bit of this one to give you an idea of what I'm talking about.
I'm here in Madrid, Spain, where tens of thousands of protesters came together on Saturday, May 12th, to mark the one-year anniversary of the Indignado movement.
Now, the first thing I wanted to point out is that when you're talking about protesters, if you look at the United States, for example, with our current unemployment rate, how many protesters do you ever see out protesting the unemployment rate? Well, you don't see any. And the reason why is because people know that the government doesn't create employment. So there's no reason to protest because there's no one to protest. Now, obviously, these people are protesting the government, so they expect the government to provide them employment. And as we'll see, they expect the government to provide them a lot of other things as well.
Inspired by the Arab Spring, the movement began with massive protests and subsequent occupations in public squares across the country. It soon gave rise to similar protests across Europe, as well as the Occupy movement in North America. Once the squares were cleared of tents and occupants late last summer, the movement diffused into numerous popular assemblies in both urban neighborhoods and rural villages. But as people gathered to organize solutions to the problems faced by their communities, the problems faced by the society at large grew continuously worse. Today, Spain faces the highest unemployment rate in the Eurozone at over 25%, and for youth under 25, it stands at over 50%. On top of that, the right-wing government voted into power last November has initiated a series of harsh austerity measures hitting nearly every service within the public sector. So the stakes were high as protesters filled the streets on Saturday, hoping to give new life to a movement that they see as the only way to bring real change to the country.
Y bueno, estoy aquí por la lucha contra los políticos estos sinvergüenzas que nada más que hacen robarnos la.
Okay, now, first of all, these people are not workers. A worker is a person who produces wealth. They're a person who works in a productive capacity. Civil servants, people who work for the government. Now, I know I'm going to get a million arguments about how the roads improve things. Yes, there is some economic impact added to by some of these roles, but by and large, for the most part, it is not accurate to call these people workers. These are civil servants, and their wages are being paid by taking the wages of the workers. So these people are trying to cast themselves as the downtrodden workers, when in fact they are the exploiters of the real workers.
Y por ser uno más, porque tenemos que luchar contra ello, porque si no el capitalismo nos va a comer.
Students, especially from the public universities, made up a key demographic at the protest and constitute a growing part of the larger anti-austerity movement in Spain. Julia is an organizer with the multi-generational platform for public education.
Nosotras venimos representando a la universidad pública, pertenecemos a las asambleas que se reúnen habitualmente de las facultades públicas. Y nosotros estamos protestando porque están privatizando la universidad, nos han implantado un decreto que reduce la posibilidad de las compañeras extracomunitarias a acceder a la universidad, pues supone una subida de tasas brutal y...
Okay, so this is something similar to what we saw in California, students protesting tuition hikes. I have a very simple suggestion. If you don't like the cost of the tuition, go somewhere else. There are plenty of community colleges, there are online universities, there's a free market for tuition. If you want to lower tuition, I suspect many of those in California want free tuition, but if you want to lower tuition, or perhaps you could be like some of the entrepreneurs in America, many of whom dropped out of the public universities, including Bill Gates and many others, to pursue their business interests. Many of them have learned in libraries. Many are self-taught. Many of the founding fathers of this nation were self-taught and learned many languages on their own. So this is the typical, I will say, civil servant socialist mindset that the only way to succeed in life is to follow the government role of government schools and government jobs, and of course that's leading to massive bankruptcy across Europe.
El pago incompleto de la matrícula lo que hace que nuestra universidad pase a ser privada. Están recortando todos los gastos en educación mientras inyectan a bancos con pérdidas. Están acabando con lo que tantos años nos ha costado conseguir, que es una educación para todas.
And there's an education for everyone, from everyone. Sounds a little bit like communism there.
De todas. Así que hoy hemos venido aquí para que se vea la universidad, para decir que estamos en contra de la subida de tasas y que vamos a luchar porque la universidad siga siendo pública.
And the anti-austerity action will continue beyond the May 12th mobilization.
El martes 22 tenemos una huelga educativa de toda la comunidad educativa, de todos los sectores, profesores, PAS, estudiantes, desde preescolar hasta universidad, para defender la educación pública y de calidad.
Raquel.
So these are people out in the street demanding that the government, at the barrel of a gun, take more money from productive citizens and give it to them. That's the bottom line. That's the reality of it. And when the violence comes, you can rest assured that the violence that we'll see in Europe and the violence that we'll see in America will be violence perpetrated by government workers. People who work for the government are the people who are going to be committing these acts of violence. And they're going to be the ones that are protesting, because as I said before, in the private sector, there's no one to protest. You don't go out and march in the streets saying and demanding that someone provide you a job, because you recognize that no one owes you a job. But these people who've been trained their entire lives to depend on the government, who takes money at the barrel of a gun from someone else and gives it to them, they're convinced, and they ultimately will threaten to become violent if the government doesn't continue doing so. And of course, we know the governments can't do that because the governments are bankrupt. The governments are already printing money to try to print their way out of the situation. Ultimately, that's going to cause the price of gold and silver to go through the roof. And as we can see, gold and silver are now basing and forming the next move up, which will probably be a much larger move, not percentage-wise, but price-wise. So we're looking for a move up into the 2000 range for gold, and ultimately for silver, we're looking for a move up above the old $48 price target. And we'll talk to you next time.